The midday sun baked the labyrinth of pier stalls in the harbor city of Aramore, where the air thrummed with exotic spices, rowdy sailors, and the ever-present salt tang of the ocean. Popeye the sailor man, his once white shirt now tinted a perpetual off-beige, threaded his way through a jostling crowd of merchants and travelers. A tattered cap sat askew on his close-cropped hair, and his weather-beaten face boasted a single determined eye that had seen countless storms, both on the high seas and in hidden realms where imagination met magic. In one calloused hand, he clutched a small can of spinach, the source of the ephemeral might he tapped whenever he dared to fuse with his eidolon companion. In the other, he firmly gripped a coil of rope looped over his shoulder, an anchor insignia tattooed on his forearm gleaming faintly, as if just waiting for the right moment to light up with supernatural power. Though Popeye bristled with raw vitality, his gait was careful, measured. He was here to meet a mentor who might help him tame the swirling maritime spirits that roiled inside him each time he called forth his eidolon. Waldo Quill scurried along behind him, notebook tucked under one arm and a quill pen in the other. A short, wiry fellow who perpetually wore round spectacles that magnified his bright, inquisitive eyes, Waldo was Popeye's self-appointed chronicler. He wrote down every detail, pausing only to summon a half-dozen tiny, butterfly-like eidolons that would flutter around the scene, each a piece of his imagination plucked free from the intangible realm. These small spirits occasionally reenacted the events he scribbled, providing an impromptu stage performance. Now, as they wound through the crowd, Waldo strained to keep up while also jotting notes on the bizarre quirk that seemed to guide the day's energies. "Popeye," Waldo called, dodging a barrel of salted fish. "Are you certain Martino Jenkins will be here? I've read he's as elusive as starlight, and just as likely to flicker out without notice." Popeye's features softened with the quiet confidence of a man certain of his mission. Me ol' buddy Waldo. Martino told me hisself we'd meet at the Rusted Anchor Tavern by noon sharp. And by the looks of the sun overhead," he squinted upward, "we's nearly there." Standing at the tavern door was Martino the Martian Jenkins. He was no less imposing than in the stories, broad shoulders, a face lined with age and discipline, and thick arms that spoke of an illustrious boxing career. Dressed in simple trousers and a faded jacket, he wore an odd contraption slung over his chest, a homemade UFO detector of copper tubing and blinking lights, rattling with every step. Where many might see an eccentric old man, Popeye recognized a legend in the ring, and a rumored master of bridging the cosmic with the spiritual. Martino's lined face broke into a grin. "Popeye," he greeted, voice low and rumbling. "Good to see you've come. You ready to unlock the next level of them spirit summons you've got rattling around in your soul?" He tapped a fingertip against Popeye's anchor tattoo, sending a pulse of energy that made it glow faintly. Waldo gawked, eyes flitting between Popeye and Martino. "You truly believe the eidolon companions have some cosmic dimension, Martino? Some extraterrestrial connection?" With a playful glint in his eye, Martino lifted the UFO detector. It crackled with faint static. "You can laugh if you want," he said, "but I've seen too much in my years to doubt the possibility. I believe these spirits come from a plane beyond any single mortal's mind, maybe even beyond this planet. The cosmic forces that swirl above us connect to our imaginations. Believe me, friend, you're all walking, breathing conduits to something bigger." He gestured for them to follow him inside. The Rusted Anchor's dim interior smelled of stale ale, sweat, and salt-soaked wood. The floors creaked ominously beneath their feet. At a corner table, a man wearing an immaculate naval uniform tapped his polished boot with evident impatience. The man's mustache was meticulously groomed to match the crispness of his attire. He looked up, revealing the sharp features of Seamus Seafoam Dillon. If Popeye was the unstoppable wave, Seamus was the shrewd helmsman who steered the ship with uncanny wit. Seamus regarded Popeye with mild disdain, though his tone remained polite. "Ah, you've arrived. I was beginning to think Martino had sent me on a fool's errand." Popeye chuckled, ignoring the remark. "Seamus, I heard ye was interested in seeing these powers firsthand." Seamus nodded, pulling out a deck of intricately carved cards. "I am a practitioner of the eidolon companion art as well, though I prefer more refined methods than guzzling spinach to turn one's limbs into battering rams." Martino raised a calming hand. "Easy, Seafoam. Popeye's style may look sloppy, but it packs a punch from the very depths of the ocean." He turned to Popeye. "I've asked Seamus to observe your training. He's one of the craftiest tacticians I know. His viewpoint might help you see more angles." Before Popeye could respond, the tavern door burst open with a thunderous slam. A towering figure, all bulging biceps and broad shoulders, thrust his way in. He wore flamboyant pants with bold stripes, part of a circus strongman's getup, and every step he took made the floor shudder. The spiced smoke hush of the crowd fell silent as Stryker the strongman surveyed the room. His eyes, the color of dark ale, swept across patrons until they landed on Popeye. "You there?" he boomed, pointing an enormous finger. "You're the one they call Popeye, right?" His volume alone rattled mugs on nearby tables. Popeye sighed, glancing at Waldo, who was furiously scribbling. "Aye, that's me name." Stryker stomped closer, chest puffed out like a rooster ready for a fight. "I hear you're the one who claims to be unstoppable. Well, I've come to challenge that claim. I am Stryker, the mightiest man to ever sail with a traveling circus. And I'm here for her." He whipped a folded flyer from his belt, which bore a stylized image of olive oil. "They say she's the greatest seer in 100 leagues, but I figure she's also got a heart that needs winning. And I'll prove my strength is second to none, especially yours." Waldo let out a small squeak. Seamus stood, gathering his cards in a swirl of refined motion. Now, Stryker. I'm sure we can handle this with some grace. There's no need for a bar brawl." Stryker barked a laugh. "Grace? How about a demonstration, right here, right now? And after I trounce your friend, I'll claim olive oil's admiration once and for all." Popeye's brow furrowed. Normally he wasn't one to indulge in puffed-up challenges, but something about Stryker's arrogance set his blood pumping. Moreover, Martino seemed curious, and Popeye rarely backed down if his mentor was around to assess his progress. He downed the can of spinach in a single gulp, bracing himself as that familiar tang flooded his mouth. His anchor tattoo began to glow, the ephemeral swirl of maritime spirits crashing through him like a roiling wave. "Ahoy!" Popeye's forearms bulged, the muscle fibers surging in size. A phantom wind rustled through the tavern, carrying the distant echo of sea shanties. Then, in a voice like rolling thunder, Popeye declared, "Spinach-fueled sailor surge." A shimmering silhouette, shaped like an ancient mariner clad in spectral rigging, blossomed behind him. The Eidolon's presence merged into Popeye's form, making every limb pulse with supernatural strength. Waldo dropped behind an upturned table to take notes, while Seamus stepped back with a practiced air of caution. Stryker responded with a loud, showy flex, the veins in his neck bulging as he summoned his own robust Eidolon. It formed from swirling neon sparks, shaped like an exaggerated circus ringmaster wielding an oversized whip. With a grunt that shook the rafter beams, Stryker roared, "Behemoth bicep buster." His muscle mass swelled, he now looked capable of splitting the tavern in half. Martino, arms crossed, studied both men intently, the blinking lights on his UFO detector glowing like stars. The tavern patrons scrambled for cover. Popeye shot forward in a blur, fists crackling with brine-scented energy. Stryker rushed to meet him, the floor groaning under their combined weight. When their fists met, it was like a cannon going off, tables flipped, mugs shattered, and the tension in the air whirled into a fierce vortex. Stryker's foot slid back a fraction. He grit his teeth. "I've never been matched in raw power before," he growled through clenched jaws. "But that just means I'll show you my next technique, superior serpentine strike." He twisted his torso like a coiling serpent, channeling the ringmaster Eidolon's whip-like precision into his arm. The resulting punch hammered Popeye in the side, sending him careening into the bar. Splinters exploded upon impact, the entire array of bottled liquors toppled onto Popeye in a crystalline rain. Popeye let out a groan, forcing himself upright. The ephemeral anchor on his forearm shimmered more brightly, stirring some deeper resonance within his chest. He took a few shuddering breaths, recognized that unstoppable well of maritime determination, then rushed forward again. "Typhoon knuckle crash," he bellowed, thrusting both fists out in a crossblock that caught Stryker's next blow. Then, pivoting, Popeye slammed his fists into Stryker's midsection, unleashing a shockwave that buckled the tavern floorboards. Stryker skidded across the floor, gasping for breath, cracks splintering beneath his heels. But he refused to yield. "I'm not done." His Eidolon flared, intensifying his physique to near inhuman proportions. But just as he gathered his strength for a final assault, Martino intervened, stepping between them with surprising agility for a man his age. "That's enough." Martino's voice cut through the tension with a command honed in boxing arenas across the globe. "We're not here to tear each other apart. Save your brawling for a time and place that doesn't endanger bystanders." Even as Stryker's face twisted in frustration, the spectators exhaled in relief. Popeye relaxed, the anchor tattoo's glow subsiding. His muscles deflated to their normal strength, and he felt the lingering taste of spinach like an earthy echo in his mouth. Stryker huffed, massaging his ribs, before pointing a thick finger at Popeye once again. "This isn't over," the strong man declared. "You and I will settle this properly, soon enough. And olive oil will see who's the real champion. With that, Stryker stormed out, leaving a path of broken chairs and flustered patrons in his wake. Popeye wiped a bead of sweat off his brow. Martino clasped him by the shoulder. "Not bad, sailor man," he murmured. "But you still lack discipline and focus. That surge you rely on won't hold up in a prolonged fight. You exhaust yourself too quickly." Seamus sniffed, flicking an invisible speck of dust from his uniform sleeve. A prime example of brute force overshadowing strategy. If you spent half as much effort refining your Eidolon's technique, you'd use far less raw energy and stay in the fight longer. Popeye suppressed a growl. He didn't exactly relish criticism, but he also couldn't deny the kernel of truth in Seamus's words. "Aye," he grumbled. "Then let's train. Show me your fancy forms or cosmic whatevers, and I'll do me best to keep up." Martino grinned, his UFO detector giving a little beep of static. "We'll start tonight, once the sun is low. I have a hunch the cosmic energies are strongest around midnight in these parts." Waldo scribbled eagerly, miniature eidolons bobbing around him like excited fireflies. Outside, dusk settled over Aramore, painting the ocean skyline in purples and oranges. Popeye, Waldo, Seamus, and Martino made their way along the docks, searching for a quieter section of beach to train. Cracked wooden planks gave way to sand, a cooling sea breeze rippling over them. Waldo paused to admire the waves. In the distance, a cluster of tents and flickering lights suggested a traveling carnival, the likely domain of Stryker's circus. Popeye tensed at the memory of the strongman's challenge, but Martino pressed on, leading them farther from civilization. Soon, they arrived at a cove where jagged rocks formed a natural amphitheater. The moon cast a silvery glow, reflecting on the water's surface. Martino took his place on a large, flat rock. "First," he began, "understand that your Eidolon isn't just an imaginary friend. It's a doorway, one that connects your psyche to an otherworldly realm. By calling forth these personae, we risk losing ourselves. But in mastering them, we touch powers beyond mortal comprehension." He shifted his gaze to Popeye, who stood with arms folded. "Your anchor tattoo is a conduit for your maritime spirits. Don't just rely on spinach to brute force your body into transformation. Work in harmony with the spirit, the ancient mariner who resides in your psyche. Seek his knowledge, not just his muscle." Popeye listened, brows furrowed. He'd never thought to reason with his Eidolon. It had always felt like a raw, unstoppable wave, something to be unleashed. But under Martino's guidance, he knelt in the sand, closed his good eye, and tried to feel the presence within. He found it, a salty essence, humming with centuries of voyaging wisdom. Meanwhile, Seamus spoke up. "If you only rely on physical might, you'll fail to block advanced Eidolon manipulations." He held up his deck of cards, each meticulously etched with arcane symbols. "The way I cast is by weaving illusions and psychological snares, controlling the battlefield. Observe." With a dramatic flourish, he fanned the deck in his hand. "Cognitive constrictor," he shouted. At once, a spectral serpentine figure slithered out of the cards, weaving around Popeye. Popeye snapped his eye open and nearly leapt to his feet, fists raised, but the serpent was intangible. It coiled in a circle, letting out an eerie hiss that only Popeye seemed to hear in his mind. Martino nodded approvingly. "Good. Now, Popeye, sense how your spirit can cut through illusions. Summon your anchor's sight to pierce the haze." Popeye furrowed his brow, focusing on the swirling maritime energy in his chest. He muttered through gritted teeth, "See soul vision." The anchor tattoo glimmered, and a faint aquamarine aura enveloped his eye. Suddenly, the illusory serpent's shape flickered, partially transparent. With a swift move, Popeye swung an arm and dispersed it like mist. Seamus blinked in mild astonishment. "Huh. Quick study." A satisfied grin crossed Popeye's face. Yet, he also realized how draining it was to maintain the connection without simply turning on his brute strength. Still, he felt a strange exhilaration. This was a new path, a better control over the mystical tide inside him. Their training continued under the moonlight, each taking turns demonstrating techniques. Waldo even conjured small comedic eidolons that performed pantomime versions of the illusions Seamus used, clarifying how each layering of magic worked. Martino offered corrections, at times calling forth a faint glow from his UFO detector that made no sense to anyone but him. However bizarre his methods, the old boxer was methodical, ensuring Popeye could meld mental acuity and raw might. Near midnight, when a sharp chill crept across the beach, their session was interrupted by the distant sound of an anguished wail. Popeye and Seamus spun around, scanning the dark horizon. Waldo's miniature eidolons scattered in alarm. From around a large boulder stepped a gaunt, hollow-eyed figure in tattered robes. Hagatha, the exorcist, looked every bit as fearsome as the rumors said, her cheeks sunken, her hands jittery as if seized by half-mad fervor. Clutched in her arms was a time-worn tome, bound in some cracked leather that reeked of ancient spells. So, she whispered, voice raspy, the rumors were true. A congregation of conjurers, how deplorable. Her gaze fell upon Popeye's anchor tattoo and then flicked to Seamus's deck. Next, she caught sight of Martino and the UFO detector. You can't hide your wicked conjurations from me. The price of your meddling will be your very souls. Popeye rose to his feet, fists clenched. And who might ye be? I am Hagatha, the exorcist hissed. And I cleanse the world of Eidolon companions. They are corrupt shades, feeding on mortal weakness. She lifted a bony hand, and shadows swirled around her. I once let my own Eidolon slip too far into my mind. Now I purge them from others, so none shall suffer the madness that nearly consumed me. Martino stood protectively before Popeye. Hagatha, you're misguided. The Eidolons aren't inherently evil. They reflect what's within us, our hopes, fears, potential. If you only see corruption, perhaps you should exorcise your own hatred. Silence. She shrieked. You have no idea the torment these spirits can bring. But soon, I will rid you all of your illusions. Without further warning, she opened the tome. Pages flipped wildly in the windless night, as if possessed by invisible hands. A swirl of spectral darkness poured forth, forming snarling, wraith-like beasts that scuttled across the sand. Each beast howled with otherworldly hunger, eyes glowing an unearthly red. Waldo gasped, scribbling notes but trembling so hard his script turned shaky. Seamus's face hardened. Popeye, we need to combine efforts. My illusions can distract, but I'll need you to land real hits. Popeye nodded. Martino touched his shoulder. Focus. Draw in that spirit, but channel it carefully. A surge of bravery flooded Popeye. He unclipped another can of spinach from his belt and guzzled it. Anchor spirit, resonance form, he roared. The anchor tattoo ignited with an azure glow that bathed the beach in ghostly light. An apparition of the old mariner superimposed itself over Popeye, merging with his body. This time, though, he didn't merely bloat with raw muscle, his stance shifted with ancient mariner skill, eyes gleaming with the cunning of 1,000 voyages. Seamus flicked his deck outward. Phantasmal regatta. Cards spiraled in the air, summoning half a dozen translucent galleons that sailed through the sand like water. They crashed into the wraith beasts, tangling them in phantom rigging. The beasts snarled and snapped, momentarily disoriented. Now, Popeye, Seamus shouted. Popeye lunged forward. Tidal anchor bash. A torrent of energy shaped like a massive anchor hammered down on the snarling wraiths, cracking the sand with a resounding boom. Several of Hagatha's conjurations dissolved into wispy nothingness. Hagatha scowled, incanting faster. Her tome flared with necrotic energy, conjuring more vile shapes. You think you can overcome the corruption so easily? I'll show you how deep this darkness runs. A swirl of vile force gathered above her, forming what looked like a massive ribcage of living shadow. It slammed down between Popeye and Seamus, dividing them. Popeye braced himself, feeling the scorching weight of the dark magic press against his anchor aura. On the other side, Seamus was forced to defend himself alone, illusions flickering as he frantically parried lunging wraith beasts. Martino stepped forward, the lights on his UFO detector going haywire. The cosmic energies are swirling fiercely. He clenched his fists, the old reflex of a champion boxer shining in his gaze. Allow me to show you a classic combination. Galactic cross-counter. As he spoke, Martino briefly summoned his own Eidolon, a towering, translucent figure resembling a stoic alien boxer with elongated limbs. The alien spirit merged with Martino, and in a single swift movement, Martino dashed forward. He unleashed a 1-2 punch that glowed with star-like bursts, shattering the shadowy ribcage that trapped Seamus. Seamus coughed, relieved, but his illusions faltered under the onslaught. I can't keep these illusions stable forever. Popeye cursed under his breath and launched another assault. Mariner's fury, sink or swim. He spun his arms in a windmill motion, generating a vortex of swirling sea-green energy that dragged several wraiths in, destroying them with a watery explosion. For a moment, he locked eyes with Hagatha. He saw no malice, only fanatic desperation. However, more wraiths crawled out of the swirling gloom around Hagatha. They threatened to overwhelm Popeye's group. The situation grew dire. If they fell here, who knew how many innocents would be subject to Hagatha's cleansing? Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows behind Hagatha, olive oil, her slender form outlined by moonlight. She raised her oracle cards with a gentle, confident grace. Popeye felt his heart leap at the sight of her. She was dressed in a simple but flowing tunic, eyes half lidded as always, as though she saw beyond mortal sight. Her voice was soft, yet it carried like a clarion in the chaotic night. "Hagatha," she called. "Your path leads only to darkness, not salvation. The future I see holds a place for Eidolons, for good or ill, they are part of our existence." Her oracle cards flared, each radiating a different hue. "I will not allow you to harm Popeye or anyone else with your misguided crusade. Even the spirits tremble at your fury, but they need not be destroyed. They must be guided." Olive's hands glowed. Foreteller's aegis. A luminous wave spread out, enveloping Popeye, Seamus, Martino, and Waldo. The comforting energy warded off the wraiths, temporarily pushing back Hagatha's shadowy forces. The exorcist spat, eyes wild. "You dare to meddle?" Olive didn't flinch. "I see more than you can imagine. Let the stars themselves be my witness, you will not claim their souls." In unison, Popeye and Seamus used the brief reprieve to strike. Waldo, inspired by Olive's show of courage, summoned his whimsical miniature Eidolons. They took the shape of small, laughing jesters who pranced around Hagatha, distracting her from continuing her incantations. Hagatha swatted at them in annoyance, her concentration wavering. "Do it now," Martino bellowed. Popeye inhaled, holding Olive's calm eyes in his mind. For the first time, the maritime spirit within him felt less like a wild squall and more like a steadfast companion. He placed a hand over his anchor tattoo, the glow intensifying. "Final oceanic onslaught," he roared, charging forward. Water from the nearby tide seemed to rush inward, swirling into a massive wave behind him. Then he leapt, delivering a punch that unleashed a watery explosion upon Hagatha. Seamus complemented the assault with razor-wind regality. A cutting blast of refined spirit energy shaped like a regal rapier that slashed through the dark. Hagatha screamed as the dual strike sent her sprawling backward, her tome clattering in the sand. After the uproarious collision, the beach fell silent except for the lapping of the ocean against the shore. Darkness no longer swirled around Hagatha, the wraiths had dissolved into nothing. Gasping, she crawled toward her tome, only to see it whisked away by one of Waldo's small jester Eidolons, which gleefully carried it out of reach. For a moment, Popeye stood over Hagatha, breath heaving, fists clenched. He felt the maritime spirit within him settle, leaving behind the quiet hush of an endless ocean. Olive placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Let her be," she whispered. "She's lost in her own torment." Hagatha slumped in defeat, tears lining her hollow cheeks.
I only wanted to spare others from what I suffered. My Eidolon tried to devour my soul when I was young."
Her voice cracked with bitter remorse. "But I see now, there are those who can handle these spirits without falling. Perhaps you can find peace," Olive said gently, "by understanding that not all Eidolons are monstrous. Some reflect the best within us, or at least our potential to overcome darkness. It's not too late, Hagatha." The exorcist closed her eyes, trembling. She offered no further resistance as Popeye and the others moved away, leaving her to reconcile her inner demons. In the days that followed, word spread quickly of the battle on the beach. Hagatha vanished from Aramor, leaving behind only questions of whether she would truly forsake her crusade. For now, though, peace returned, albeit with tension crackling beneath the surface. At the same time, Olive's prophecy portended more challenges ahead. She had glimpsed a vision of turmoil, circus tents in flames, a clash of brute strength, and a cosmic sign looming in the sky. Sure enough, it wasn't long before Stryker reappeared, calling Popeye out for a rematch, this time in the big top 10 of his traveling carnival, only 2 nights away. Olive had warned Popeye of this confrontation, hinting that Stryker's ambition might lead him to dangerously overextend his own Eidolon, perhaps even tread into the same madness Hagatha warned about. The carnival ground was a swirl of color and noise, fireworks crackling overhead, rowdy crowds lining up for sugar-coated confections, and jugglers tossing flaming batons. In the largest tent, Stryker had arranged a makeshift arena. Lights glared down from above, shining on the ring where a hush settled over onlookers. Popeye entered to subdued applause, accompanied by Waldo, Seamus, and Martino. Olive stood beside them, looking worried. Stryker stood in the center of the ring, bare-chested and glistening, a mountainous figure. Gasps of awe rippled through the crowd at his sheer size. His Eidolon flickered behind him, an exaggerated strongman silhouette thrice his own height. Cheers erupted as he raised a fist. "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen," Stryker bellowed, brimming with theatrical flair. "Tonight, I prove myself the greatest." He turned to Popeye, eyes aflame with competitive zeal. This time, there will be no holds barred. We fight until one of us can't stand. Popeye stepped forward. The crowd's roar washed over him, but his focus was on the swirling energy within. He had learned from Martino and Seamus, power needed to be harnessed with strategy. He had also found a deeper calm inside himself, a spiritual synergy with that ancient mariner. "Let's see who's standing at the end," Popeye said, rolling his shoulders. He glanced once at Olive, who offered a reassuring nod. A drumroll signaled the start of the match. Stryker wasted no time, he unleashed a thunderous technique, Iron Muscle Maelstrom. The ringmaster Eidolon behind him coiled its whip in a circle, generating a vortex of raw force that hammered Popeye from the side. Popeye skidded across the ring, nearly toppling into the stands, but he regained his footing, the anchor tattoo shining steadily. "That all you got?" Popeye grunted, stepping back into the ring. "Here's a bit of payback, Tidal chain combo." He called forth the swirling oceanic power, but instead of blasting it all at once, he unleashed a rapid series of punches, each infused with watery momentum. The ringmaster Eidolon struggled to parry them. Stryker snarled, matching each blow with a muscular block, the ring reverberating with every impact. Spectators gasped as the men's fists cracked the air like thunder. As the duel raged on, Popeye could sense Stryker's desperation. The strong man was pushing his body beyond limits, feeding more and more of his psyche into the ringmaster Eidolon. That's when it happened. Stryker's eyes flickered with a manic light, and veins bulged dangerously. "Enough," he roared. "You won't upstage me." He turned to the ringmaster Eidolon and shouted, "Ultimate Juggernaut Fusion." A savage ripple of energy coursed through him, merging him completely with the Eidolon. The tense supports creaked under the pressure. Now an unsettling aura enveloped Stryker, his muscles inflated further, his eyes wide and bloodshot. The crowd fell silent, awestruck and fearful. Popeye stared. This was the risk Martino had warned him about, inviting an Eidolon too deeply. "Stryker," Popeye yelled, voice echoing across the tent. "You're losing yourself." The strong man let out a guttural laugh, voice distorted by the ringmaster spirit. "I feel power. And I will prove my worth to Olive Oil at last." He raised an arm. Colossal carnival collapse. He brought his fists down, releasing a shockwave that tore through the ring's floor, splintered wooden boards flying in all directions. The entire tent swayed precariously. Screams erupted as onlookers scrambled to escape the possible collapse. Seamus and Martino, standing by Olive, immediately reacted. Seamus flung illusions to steer the crowd to safety, while Martino rushed to brace a failing support beam. Waldo's miniature gestures guided panicked carnival goers away from falling debris. In the ring, Popeye was battered by the shockwave, forced to a knee. He tasted blood on his lip. This wasn't just a test of brute strength anymore, Stryker's mania threatened everyone. Summoning a resolute breath, Popeye tapped into the synergy he had worked so hard to cultivate. He closed his eyes, envisioning the ancient mariner's wise gaze, the cosmic resonance Martino had so often alluded to. Slowly, the anchor tattoo glowed with an otherworldly brilliance, more refined than ever before. He rose, voice calm yet commanding. "Mariner's heart, surge of the sea and sky." The ring seemed to fill with the roar of far-off tides, and a luminous aura spread from Popeye's feet outward, solidifying the cracked boards, stabilizing the ground. He advanced on Stryker, each footstep accompanied by a rolling tide of aquamarine energy. Stryker roared again, swinging a massive fist. Popeye caught the blow, his arms trembled with the effort, but he held fast. The swirling oceanic energy spiraled around him, siphoning the destructive force away. "You're not the only one with a big Eidolon, Stryker," Popeye said. "But you're letting it eat your soul. That ain't strength, that's surrender." Stryker snarled, straining, but Popeye unleashed his final assault, a technique both elegantly controlled and immeasurably powerful. Anchor of the cosmos. The anchor on his forearm blazed with starlight, and from behind Popeye, a vast silhouette of a cosmic mariner coalesced, the sky dotted with glittering stars that seemed to revolve around it. With a decisive swing, Popeye hammered Stryker squarely in the chest, unleashing a geyser of shimmering cosmic water that blasted him clean off his feet. The crowd gasped as Stryker soared across the ruined ring, finally crashing against a wooden post. The ringmaster Eidolon peeled away from his body with a tormented cry, dissolving into fading sparks that rained down. Stryker slumped, reverting to his normal size. Weakly, he tried to stand, panting. But his legs gave out, and he collapsed to his knees, battered not just physically, but spiritually. For a moment, no one moved. Then the crowd erupted in applause and cries of relief. Martino exhaled, letting the support beam clatter to the side. Seamus dispelled his illusions. Waldo sank to the ground, scribbling the final lines of a triumphant narrative. Olive hurried to Popeye's side. "Striker," Popeye said softly, stepping closer. The strong man gazed up at him, confusion and shame in his eyes. "Is that what you wanted, to lose yourself just to win a fight?" Striker trembled, beads of sweat trickling down his temple.
I only wanted to prove I was worthy, that I could have her admiration."
Olive knelt by the strong man, gazing at him kindly. "Striker, you're not unworthy. You are strong, yes, but that alone doesn't define your value. Your ambition nearly destroyed you tonight. There's more to you than being the strongest." Striker bowed his head. Despite his battered form, tears glistened in his eyes. "I failed," he whispered. "I lost my sense of self, and for what?" Popeye extended a hand. "Come on, pal. We all can learn from mistakes. I only overcame ye because of the help I got from me friends, from Martino's mentorship, from me own mistakes." Hesitatingly, Striker accepted the hand, allowing Popeye to help him stand. As the rings remained settled, the carnival staff rushed to keep the tent from collapsing further. Amid the chaos, an unexpected hush of camaraderie drifted over the battered fighters. Popeye realized he no longer resented Striker's challenge, he felt empathy for the man who had let his eidolon overshadow his own spirit. Outside, under starry skies, the group reconvened. Martino offered Striker a battered tin of salve for bruises. Seamus quietly nodded in acknowledgement of Popeye's prowess. Waldo finished scribbling the epic conclusion of their struggle, his miniature gestures performing a triumphant jig. Olive looked at Popeye with fond admiration, her quiet composure more radiant than the carnival lights that still flickered. That night, as they gathered at a makeshift campfire outside the shattered big top, each reflected on how much they had grown. Popeye had learned that raw power alone wasn't enough, control, wisdom, and the support of others were crucial. Seamus, for his part, had seen that while cunning illusions were valuable, sometimes direct honesty and unstoppable resolve carried the day. Striker recognized the depth of his own insecurities, vowing to refine his strength for a purpose beyond mere applause or envy. Waldo, scribbling the final lines, discovered how essential stories were, not just for entertainment, but for preserving lessons that shaped their future. Martino felt vindicated in his cosmic theories, watching the synergy of eidolon energies unfold with unprecedented brilliance. And Olive, feeling the flow of unseen fates, sensed the subtle shift in destiny that united them as something more than just traveling acquaintances. They had become a family bound by the extraordinary. Morning broke over a calmer Aramore. A gentle sea breeze swept away the burnt smell of stray fireworks and the dust of broken carnival rides. Word spread of the epic confrontation within the big top, and people flocked to see the aftermath, some out of morbid curiosity, others seeking tales of heroism. With Seamus's help, the carnival staff organized repairs, turning the shattered ring into a place of new beginnings rather than ruin. Striker, albeit sore, already volunteered his massive strength to hoist new beams into place. The crowds regarded him with cautious respect, no longer seeing him as an unbridled brute but as a man who had confronted his darkest impulses. As Popeye and his companions strolled through the carnival grounds, now overshadowed by scaffolding and half-finished tents, they exchanged knowing smiles. Seamus hummed to himself, occasionally flipping a card and shaping a harmless illusion for passers-by. Waldo's gestures trailed them, reenacting comedic fragments of the prior night's battle. Martino, humming about cosmic synergy, fiddled with his UFO detector, remarking that it was unusually quiet compared to the chaotic energies of the night before. Olive walked beside Popeye, her hand brushing his arm in silent gratitude. On the outskirts of the fair, near a grove of coconut palms swaying in the breeze, they gathered one last time. Popeye looked from face to face, feeling a tightness in his chest. This was more than just a ragtag group. They had forged something unbreakable. Seamus folded his arms, but his tone was companionable. "Well, sailor man, it seems you can do more than just bulldoze your way through obstacles after all. Perhaps there's merit in your unstoppable spirit, though I still find your spinach habit perplexing." Popeye let out a hearty laugh. "Hey, guess you was right about me needing more smarts in me approach, Seamus. I appreciate the pointers." Waldo piped up. "I've documented everything, from your earliest training with Martino to the final showdown with Striker. I'd like to keep traveling with you, Popeye. There are so many more stories to write, so much more magic to explore." Popeye nodded, ruffling Waldo's hair in a friendly gesture. "I'd be honored, me friend." Martino stepped forward, arms crossed, that same fatherly glint in his eyes. "You've come a long way, Popeye. But don't get complacent. If Hagatha resurfaces with a new mission or if some other threat emerges." Popeye grinned. Then we'll handle it. And we won't do it alone. Stryker, who had walked up behind them, rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. I owe you an apology, Popeye. And to Olive, too. I let my need to be the strongest overshadow my sense of self. He looked down at his large hands, flexing them slowly. I won't give up my strength. I love the rush of the crowd, the thrill of performing, but I need to channel it in a healthier way. If I keep traveling with the circus, maybe I'll put on a show that inspires folks, rather than endangers them. Olive smiled gently, a light dancing in her half-lidded eyes. I see a path for you, Stryker, where your feats of strength bring wonder instead of fear. You only have to choose it. He nodded resolutely, turning to Popeye. No more hostility, friend. Though, a glimmer of amusement crept into his gaze, I can't promise I won't challenge you again one day, purely for sport. Popeye smirked. I wouldn't have it any other way. A sense of renewal hung in the air. The carnival once more bustled with bright potential, the city of Aramore shining in the morning light. From the harbor, ships called out with horn blasts, beckoning travelers to new horizons. And in that moment, with the sounds of gulls and the hustle of a lively port, it felt as if the darkness of the previous nights had receded, leaving behind only a sense of possibility. With unspoken agreement, the group walked back toward the docks. Olive lingered close to Popeye, resting a hand on his forearm where the anchor tattoo still glimmered faintly. Seamus paced at a measured distance, flipping a card between nimble fingers. Martino ambled at the rear, occasionally glancing at the sky, as though expecting a cosmic sign. Waldo hopped about excitedly, describing new story ideas that fluttered around him in the form of adorable, dancing eidolons. Popeye paused at the gangplank of a modest brig, the Windbreaker, which was set to sail to the next port by dusk. He studied the vessel, the creaking hull, the sails flapping in the breeze. We set sail tonight, he said to the others, his voice wistful yet full of determination. There's more to learn about these eidolons, more to see in the wide world. And more cosmic mysteries to unravel, Martino added, patting his UFO detector. We might even encounter Hagatha again, Olive murmured. I sense her presence still, somewhere beyond the horizon. Seamus shrugged, a wry smile tugging at his lips. Then we shall be ready. My illusions have become sharper thanks to you, Popeye. Perhaps on the next journey, I'll create an entire phantasmal fleet for us to sail through storms unseen. Stryker gave a hearty laugh from behind them. That'd be a sight worth seeing. Meanwhile, I'll be perfecting the big top. If you ever return to Aramore, maybe you'll see a new show, one that honors real strength of spirit. Popeye nodded, offering a farewell handshake that Stryker firmly returned. In that clasp, any lingering rivalry evaporated into mutual respect. Then Popeye turned to the others, a broad grin splitting his weathered face. Time to go, mates. Let's see what wonders, and brawls, await us on the next horizon. All around them, Aramore buzzed with the promise of a new day. The sails above flapped, beckoning them onward. Waldo's quill scratched furiously, capturing the last lines of this particular chapter of their lives, but leaving plenty of blank pages for the adventures yet to come. Olive's gaze lingered on Popeye one final moment before she stepped onto the gangplank, that mysterious smile lighting her face. As the Windbreaker pulled away, a hush fell over the wharf. Martino leaned against the deck's railing, eyes scanning the sky for cosmic signs. Seamus found a perch at the bow, practicing illusions with a playful, half-smug grin. Waldo flitted about, conjuring miniature eidolons that soared overhead like curious seabirds. And Popeye the sailor man, stood at the helm, feeling the spin of the wheel beneath his rough palms, the fresh salt wind filling his lungs. His anchor tattoo, etched into his thick forearm, glowed softly with that spectral, briny aura. Once, he had relied on brute force and a can of spinach alone. Now, he understood the deeper synergy with his eidolon, that ancient maritime spirit that whispered secrets of the sea and the cosmos alike. In that subtle understanding, he knew he had taken a step forward, forging a bond that would protect him from the darkest storms, both within and without. And so he set his gaze on the open ocean, letting its vastness reflect his own limitless potential. The group of them, eccentric, headstrong, bound by fate, sailed toward unknown waters. Challenges would arise, no doubt. There would be rivals and threats, wonders and revelations, cosmic storms and illusions more intricate than anything they had yet seen. But they would face them together, each forging new paths for their eidolons, each writing new legends for Waldo's notebook, and each discovering ever deeper truths about themselves in the grand tapestry of existence. Perhaps one day Hagatha would return, or Stryker would demand another match, or a new enemy from beyond the stars would test Martino's cosmic theories. But at that moment, as the windbreaker cut through the waves under a radiant sun, it felt like a triumphant dawn, a conclusion to one tale and the promise of countless more. Popeye's one good eye shimmered with gratitude and determination. He tightened his grip on the wheel, letting the ocean breeze swirl through his soul. Full speed ahead, he murmured, voice thick with emotion. The sails billowed, and the windbreaker surged across sparkling waters, carrying them onward, braver, wiser, and bound together by unbreakable bonds formed in the crucible of challenge and victory. And in the trailing wake, shaped by foamy currents, one could almost glimpse the faint silhouettes of Eidolon companions dancing like guardians of the deep, guiding their mortal counterparts toward a destiny as vast and boundless as the sea itself.